Hello, good morning, everyone. So today we're going to study week one for quarter two. But before that, let us recall what we had for the first quarter period and its relation to our second quarter's um, series of lessons. So in week one, we have learned different sources of information. We have it is divided into two, right? The general and specific sources of information. So the general sources of information is divided into three. We have primary, secondary, and tertiary sources. Um, for the for the specific sources of information, we have studied five different kinds, and those are news, articles, magazine articles, books, and reference materials like dictionary, encyclopedia, almanac, those. And we also studied textual aids. And texts in English are divided into two. It's linear and non-linear text. When we say linear text, we are talking about those sentences or paragraphs that is it's called linear because it has a certain path. When we say non-linear text, those are the textual aids, the diagrams, charts in English. So, and aside from those, we have also studied plot, setting, and characterization. It's very important for English to understand the information about plot, setting, and characterization. We have learned the difference between characters and characterization, the different kinds of conflict, and a whole lot more about plot. And we also studied evaluation and judgment. So we learned that we have two kinds of evaluation or judgment. The first one is called objective judgment, and the second one is subjective judgment. When we say objective judgment, we are talking about uh, judgment that has no personal feelings, that personal feelings are not involved. And we say um, subjective judgment, our personal feelings are involved. And how are we going to judge a certain text? We are going to use, in an objective way, we're going to use rubrics, okay? So that it will be free from our personal judgment and um, biases. And yeah, we evaluated two different kinds of text. The reading text, reading texts are like novels, books, and we have audio text. So audio texts are not just limited to speeches. We also evaluate poems and songs, because songs um, are a kind of poem. So for today, and those are the basics of understanding research, because we have to understand that we need to know where to get the information that we need if ever that we're gonna do our research for the fourth quarter. So yes, so you have learned the sources of information, its different kinds, and we're going to talk about writing right now. So let me reveal to you our lesson for today. So our lesson for today, for those who were not able to attend the Google Meet yesterday, I'm going to recall what we had yesterday. So quarter two, week one, we're going to study the language of research, campaigns, and advocacies. Why is there a need to understand campaigns and advocacies? What is the relation of these to research? Okay, so before anything else, let's review what is the role of language. So language plays an essential role in our lives. More than just serving a way for us to communicate with one another, language enables us to inform, entertain, influence, and persuade others. So I want you to remember the functions of language. The three basic functions of language is PIE. P-I-E. Persuade for letter P, I is to inform, and E is for to entertain, rather. So when we say persuade, the other word for this is convince. Language is used for us to convince other people to side on our side. So it has its function for that. And the second one, language is used to inform. So when we read newspapers or when we listen to TV, or when we scroll Facebook, we are learning some things because it is one of the functions of language. And letter E, to entertain. So we also like language, and language is also very important because it gives us happiness in a way. So why do we read mangas, or why do we watch anime or different TV sitcoms and stuff? Because it makes us happy, because the language that is used in that part is for us to enjoy it and savor the scenes using and saying those specific lines. And I'm not just talking about English, it's also in Tagalog, diba, when we watch different series. All right. So let's go to the language of research. So research makes use of a formal, academic, and persuasive language. So it is described in this paragraph that the language of research is three. Number one, it's a formal writing. Second, it is an academic writing. And third one, which we're gonna focus today, is persuasive language. Language, more than research, more than just informing, it means persuading others to side on your findings. So it says here, to communicate discussions and present corresponding findings, as I've said, for variables studied. And language greatly matters in research, as it enables the researcher to effectively communicate valuable results to his or her target readers. For some, understanding the language of research can also mean becoming familiar and acquainted with terminologies usually associated with this. So right now, we're not going to study the terminologies for research. It's gonna be tackled on the fourth quarter. But today, we're going to understand how is research written. So what function of language are we going to use? So that is persuasive language. All right. So for campaigns, usually social or political in nature, is technically defined as a planned set of activities. So I will explain later what is the connection of research and campaigns. So when we say campaign, it is political in nature. Of course, as you can see when you are watching YouTube, there are a lot of advertisements about the politicians that will be running for the 2022 elections, right? So you call it campaign. And it is technically defined as a planned set of activities that people carry out to attain a certain goal or objective. But campaigns aren't just limited to politics. It's also social in nature, and campaigns can be like environmental campaigns, zero waste products, so you call it campaign. A campaign speech basically is a well-planned, take note, it's a well-planned, it's not an impromptu speech, but a well-planned speaking activity that aims, so what is the function of campaign? It aims to excite and persuade or motivate listeners to convince them to adhere to the speaker's idea. So what's the goal of campaign? For you to be excited, for the readers to be excited, and to be persuaded, to convince them to adhere to a specific idea. All right? Next one, we have advocacy. So advocacy refers to the activities that argue, take note, these are the activities that argue, plead, support, or favor a certain cause. So various causes for advocacy usually aim to influence decision making, especially with issues involving social, political, environmental, and economic perspectives. So there is a huge difference between a campaign and an advocacy. What is their similarity? They both use persuasive language, but campaigns is more on exciting you for you and it is well planned and to excite the readers to side on your side. But advocacy is its main goal is to argue or argue to support or favor a certain idea. So that is the difference between the two. Okay? So, yes, let's go to the next slide. All right. So today I'm going to teach you how to do or how to write persuasive how to write persuasive essays. So why is there a need to understand the use of persuasive writing? Because we're going to write research in the later part of our lesson. So right now, for you to be able to persuade others through your research, you have to learn the basics of persuasive writing. How are you going to convince your learners in your speech or in your writing? So we're going to study the techniques or language features or device used in persuasive writing. How do we use these devices for us to produce persuasive writing? So we have 10. The first one. The first one is the use of emotive language. What do you think? Emotive here is an adjective. What do you think is the noun form of emotive? If your answer is emotions or feelings, that's correct. So we will be able to persuade other people when we use emotive language. So when we use those, it evokes certain emotions and it makes people feel a certain way. Paano ba kasi natin makakapture yung reader? Kailangan gumamit tayo ng language na makakadala sa kanila. Like for example, someone says, you know, you're so beautiful. So, di ba, parang so, sa tingin mo, napakaganda mo talaga kasi sinabihan ka, napakaganda mo talaga. So, that's one of use of emotive language. What else? Like, for example, you are my serenity. Pag sinabihan ka ng ikaw daw ay ang kanyang peace, serenity means peace, ikaw daw ang kanyang pahinga sa magulong mundo. Diba, you were being captivated and you feel certain emotions in a certain way. So, you use it when you are writing. Use as many emotive language as you can when you write persuasive text. For informal speeches. Number two, the use of modal verbs. Now, what is the root word of modal? The root word of modal is mode. Kaya nga 'di ba, meron kayo sa cellphone na airplane mode, silent mode. Mode is your choice. Alright? So, ibig sabihin, modal verbs are verbs that you just use for certain um, sentences. May gamit siya. Hindi siya pwedeng gamitin kung kailan mo lang gusto. They're all different. So, modal verbs helps adjust the level of certainty of events to suit arguments. Halimbawa, the examples of modal verbs are can, may, could, might, shall, will, should, would, need, must, ought to, have to, might, yeah. So those are kinds of modal verbs. Halimbawa, can you please do this for me versus do this for me. So, syempre, anong mas masarap pakinggan? Yung merong parang pangungupo in English by using modal verbs. So, can I use this? Yeah, instead of use this. That is very directive. So, ano pa? Halimbawa, the world should not use a lot of plastics because it is not good for our environment. So, ikaw ay nangungumbinse when you are using modal verbs. Alright? So, that's the second technique. Emotive language. Second is modal verbs. The third one is called involving readers. So how do we involve the readers in writing? We're going to use um, personal pronouns. Anong personal pronouns ang gagamitin natin? You, your, we, our, or indicative words like together. So yun, kapag kasi ginagamit natin yung you should do this, your participation will make me happy. Parang it says here that we're involving the readers, and it's one technique of persuasive writing or persuasive speech. It's hooking the reader. Kaya nga 'di ba pag may mga campaign, lalaban tayo, like that. May plano tayo. Those are the examples of political lines, right, for the election. And ikaw din naman, o nga, no, kasali pala ako, so iboboto ko siya. You call it persuading. So ikaw doon ay napapersuade or nako-convince in a way. Number 4 is called rhetorical questions. So these are questions that are not meant to be answered. It is meant for you to reflect on that. For example, why is the world crying? Something like that. You don't answer it because that's a rhetorical question. It's meant for you to realize what's happening in the world. So when you use that, when you use a rhetorical question, that's one way of persuading other people. Next, so we're halfway, and number 5 is called evidence. So what's the most popular way to persuade others? It's of course the use of evidence to prove your claim that what you're saying is really true among other opinions. So what's evidence? Evidence makes use of facts, figures, and quotes from experts, statistics. Di ba pag may ganon, for example, di ba yung safeguard, like, #1 PAMED recommended brand. So ikaw din naman, ay, bibili din ako ng safeguard kasi feeling ko safe nga ako pag gumamit ako niyan from COVID-19, blah, blah. So, you were being persuaded because they have been using evidences and statistics from famous companies and experts on a certain brand or product. So, ayan, the use of evidence. Sa mga kumukuha ng business administration, you're gonna learn the language of business through persuading other people. So, you have to learn this. Okay, and next one. Repetition. So one way of persuading other people is always to repeat and repeat and repeat keywords and phrases or ideas to appeal to the readers. O halimbawa ulit, balik tayo sa election. So, di ba, meron tayong yung mga jingle ng politicians, and then kapag boboto ka na, sinong maaalala mo? Yung may pinaka matunog at yung nakakanta mo ng mga jingle. So, that's one way of persuading other people to side on you. You have to repeat and repeat certain keywords and phrases to appeal to them and to involve them. So, yeah. And number 7, another technique of understanding or writing a persuasive essay or persuasive text is the use of adjectives and adverbs. Now, adaming litong-lito dito sa adjectives and adverbs. So when we say adjectives and adverbs, anong pinagkatulad muna nila? Adjectives and adverbs are both used in describing. So pareha silang nagde-describe. Tagalog nagde-describe. Basta they're both used in describing. Now, what's the difference? The difference is ano yung dinedescribe nila. Okay, so let's have a quick recap. When we say adjectives, these are the words, these is used to describe noun and pronoun. Bakit kasama yung pronoun? Kasi parehas lang ang function ng noun at pronoun. Medyo parehas sila in nature. So, ano ba mga example ng noun? What is noun? Name of person, place, things, or events. Kaya nga siya pangalan. So, kaya nga siya ay pangalan in Tagalog. Kasi pangalan siya ng pook, lugar. So, for example, Maria is beautiful. So, halimbawa, yung beautiful, dinadescribe niya sino daw ang beautiful? Si Maria. Si Maria ay noun. Therefore, beautiful is an adjective. Ano naman yung adverb? Okay, I have a tip for you. When we say adverb, adverbs describe adjective, verbs, and another adverb. Ulit. Adverbs describes adverbs describe adjective, verb, and another adverb. So, ang dinidescribe pala ng adverb ay adjective. Halimbawa, he dances badly. Ano daw yung masama? Yung pagsasayaw, yung dances. What part of speech is dances? Gumagalaw. It's verb. Ibig sabihin, dinidescribe niya ay verb, kaya siya ay adverb. Okay? So, yanon. Kaya, and adverbs also describe another adverb. So when we use adjectives and adverbs in writing, we are hooking the speaker. Alright, the reader, I'm sorry. So that's it. We're down to the last two. Number 8 is called association. So when we say association, it's linking an object or an idea with something already liked or desired. All right. For example, here, association. There's a cigarette here, and then there's a man inside the coffin. So it says here that cigarette is associated with death. So that's an association. So the more that you associate a certain thing, the more that you will persuade others to side on your side. Number 9, the very famous bandwagon. Ano ibig sabihin natin ng bandwagon? Ito, palagi itong ginagamit sa lahat ng advertisement. Bandwagon means everybody is doing it. So, ibig sabihin, kung lahat ay ginagamit na yung product na yun, dapat ikaw din matry mo. Kasi lahat nagtatry na nun. So, it's one way for you to convince buying a certain thing because of this word. So, for example, in the poster here, kalagay, America's favorite mascara. So, kung ang American ka, tas wala kang Maybelline na mascara, it means that you're not in. So, ikaw ngayon, bibili ka kasi lahat na may ganun maliban sa'yo. So, you see, and another here, there are so many reasons to switch to iPhone. So, dahil lahat daw, maraming rason na mag-iPhone at halos lahat daw ay may iPhone sa Amerika, dapat ikaw din daw ay may iPhone because everybody has it. Ganon din. So, it's called bandwagon. Alright, the last one, experts. One way to persuade other people is to use the words of an expert. Doctor, scientist, yon. Di ba, syempre, pag sinabi nila, recommended ng dermatologist, ikaw naman din gagamitin mo kasi you know that it's safe for you. Alright, so, let's recall the 10 language devices or techniques used in persuasive writing. We have emotive language, we have modal verbs. Number 3 is involving the reader. 4, the use of rhetorical questions. 5, using evidences. 6 is repetition. 7 is adjectives and adverbs. 8 is associations. 9 is bandwagons. And 10 is experts. So, let's go to your module. Alright. For our module, for learning task 1, please open your modules on page 6. Yan. And then, write true or false. Read the statement and write true or false. Dito naman sa learning task 2, 1 to 5, you have to identify the persuasive technique being described in each sentence. Ano yon? Yun yung mga pinag-aralan nating 10. Yung involving the readers, evidence, rhetorical questions. We are going to analyze what kind of persuasive technique is used in the sentence. So for special task 1, you are going to describe the infograph below. Bakit daw Mother Earth is crying? So write down, bakit? Siyempre, yan, figurative siya. So, yeah, explain it. And then, for learning task 4, you have to look for old newspapers or magazine. Sasabihin nyo na naman, bakit ma'am lagi na lang tayo naghahanap sa Google nito, sa newspaper nito? Kasi nga po, yun ay the basics of doing research. Kaya nga po, research. It's searching again. So, kailangan matuto kayo na lagi kayong maghahanap ng mga ganun-ganon, ng mga information na kailangan nyo para ready kayo when you're gonna write something. So it says here, refer to page 7. So pagkakuha ninyo ng sample campaign or advocacy, ipipaste nyo siya dyan sa module and then explain it. And then for the next learning task, you're going to identify kung ano yung ginamit na persuasive writing technique or persuasive writing technique dun sa kinuha ninyong campaign or advocacy sample. Okay, pwede kayong kumuha sa Google or old newspaper or magazine. Napakarami niyan sa magazine kasi maraming binebenta sa magazine. So, just identify the language feature that is used in that and then explain. Tapos halimbawa, nalimutan nyo ulit lahat ng language feature yung 10. Eh di, punta kayo ng page 8. Nandun ulit, basahin nyo. Or ibalik nyo ulit yung video na to doon. So, that's just it. And I hope you understand what we had for today. And thank you very much for watching this video. So, I'll see you next week. Bye-bye.